Graphic design versus data storytelling, the age-old rivalry. One's all about making things look good, the other is all about making things make sense. Graphic designers roll their eyes at two-tone org charts, while data storytellers shake their heads at pretty visuals that don't actually say anything. It's been a battle for ages, and only one can be victorious. Just kidding, graphic design and data storytelling don't have to be at odds. When combined, they create powerful, persuasive visuals that not only catch the eye, but also tell a compelling story. It's not about picking a side. It's about bringing them together to create graphics that inform, engage, and win. Data without storytelling is like a joke with no punchline. Technically accurate, but painfully awkward. Today, we're here to ensure your proposal graphics aren't awkward, but effective.
Graphic design makes your proposals visually appealing, but data storytelling makes them persuasive. Today we're going to bridge that gap to make sure that you create visuals that win. In today's webinar, you can expect to learn 1. The difference between design and storytelling. 2. We'll discover techniques that blend creativity and logic seamlessly. And 3. We'll gain insights to effectively communicate complex ideas in a simple and digestible way. Our goal is to create graphics that drive decision making. I'm Sydney Latchaw, co-owner and design lead of Patriot Data Graphics, where we specialize in graphics, media, and storytelling in the proposal world. Beautiful design grabs your attention, but storytelling is what holds it, and together they win proposals. Are you ready to make your data work harder for you? Understanding the difference between data storytelling and graphic design. Have you ever looked at a beautifully designed proposal and thought, that's a great graphic, but I don't entirely understand what it's talking about? Well, that's the difference between graphic design and data storytelling. Graphic design is all about aesthetics, ensuring brand consistency, and creating visual appeal. It's the first thing people notice, and it sets the entire tone. Let's start off by looking at an example that will really showcase the difference between graphic design and data storytelling. The proposal infographic that looked beautiful, but failed to deliver the message. Pretty, but with no substance. We all know people like this, and we've all seen graphics like this. So here's what we're looking at. A defense contractor wanted an infographic that showcased their cybersecurity solution for a federal agency. It had fancy words like advanced encryption and threat intelligence, but it lacked a clear narrative. It looked sleek, but it left evaluators confused as to whether or not it would solve their problems. As important as it is for graphics to be visually appealing and to draw the eye, they're often found to be all looks and no substance. This leaves your reader confused and wondering what the point of that was. Well, we took that graphic and we gave it a linear flow. We addressed some client pain points in an obvious way. We organized our value-added propositions and ultimately gave the reader an overview of why the solution not only understood their issues, but solved them.
Also, a fun fact is that a study done by 3M and the University of Michigan suggests that humans process visuals 60,000 times faster than text, which can help with knowledge retention by up to 400%. A study by Edwin Dale suggests that information presented visually had a retention rate over a 3-day period of 65% compared to 10% retention rate for information presented just verbally or in a written format. So if someone was reading textbooks or having a lecture, visual representations of the information stick better essentially. When your proposal visuals combine storytelling and design, you increase the retention and impact because you have various different components and you integrate different learning styles. Now, the word retention is often overlooked. Graphics have the opportunity to not only present the information in an eloquent way and in a very digestible way, especially in today's society, but it also helps reviewers retain the information. So when they're going back to the boardroom to make the decisions about a proposal effort, your proposal, RFP or RFI, will stick out to them. And that's the key.
What she said. Graphics are just another tool to connect with your reviewer. Here are some key elements to keep in mind while you work to optimize your graphics visually. Typography, the art of making words visually appealing. If you look around the screen, you're going to see different typefaces that set different tones. So keep in mind, A, what the requirements are, and B, what the tone is that you're trying to set. Color, setting the mood and aligning with brand identity. Not only should you be taking into account what your brand colors are, but also what the colors are of any subcontractor and even what your customer's colors are. All are relevant and all play on the subconscious of the reviewer. Layout. Ensure that there's a logical flow to your graphic. You are the guide that takes your reader from point A to point B throughout your graphic. So make sure that you're drawing their eye in a natural way. Left to right, top to bottom, keep in mind your audience, and think of what the easiest way to flow through the graphic is. You should always be thinking about that reviewer's journey. White space. Create breathing room for clarity's sake. This can be difficult, especially when you have page counts that you're limited to. So just making sure that you break up your graphics as much as possible, that you're letting them breathe and it's not just a bunch of text condensed with a couple boxes in it. Just really make sure that you're giving the reader a chance to breathe. Carve out that white space wherever possible.
Hey, me again. I just had to give a little bit of advice. We start every proposal with a branding guide dedicated to the specific effort. Sid, do you mind if I take over for a second here? The branding guide doesn't have to be extremely detailed, but it's an opportunity to take into consideration not only the prime, but any subcontractors that are also working on the effort and even your potential buyers. Combining those elements can really set you apart with evaluators, getting all of the visual elements on the same page, but also serve as a guide as you navigate the needs of the proposal.
Thanks, Monica. So now that we've given you a glimpse of that graphic design side of things, let's give you what you really want, which is that data storytelling side of things. Data storytelling is the art of taking complex information and making it digestible and understandable. Data storytelling structures information into compelling narratives. It adds logic and context to design, making sure your audience not only sees it, but understands it and remembers it. Now let's look at the opposite side of the coin with another example. We had a client come to us with a lot of words. They had a meeting with a pretty high up official in the DHS space, and they needed to really wow them and leave them with something memorable to remember their solution by. We were essentially given a 20-page white paper on why their services were needed, and their services were basically optimizing existing infrastructure and equipment. So we took that paper and a PowerPoint slide that broke my heart, and we started to build. We laid the groundwork with a relevant background image that gave it some texture. There's that graphic design piece that we've been talking about. And then we began to build the dial that represented the integration between the existing infrastructure and their services, the all-encompassing program management piece. We then went on to lay out all of the services they provide as different pieces to the pie. We added some iconography that they could reference in additional reports or proposals. Having those icons that you can call back to throughout an entire document is super helpful to your reviewer as they work to guide themselves through your proposal. Then we created another ring that represented the whole of their service offering that grounded the audience in what they were looking at. Labels matter, folks. Make sure that the audience knows exactly what they're looking at. Otherwise, it will just get lost. After that, we added those existing pieces of infrastructure that would be optimized through their services. And then at the center of it, we placed what the overall goal was: mission success for securing borders around the world. At the bottom, we put what I call the so what piece. How is this solution ultimately going to benefit the reviewer? Any chance you get, you should be calling this out in any graphic that you're making. This infographic became their secret weapon, a single snapshot into their key capabilities, their value-added propositions, and how their services could be implemented. Here are some of the key elements that you should take into account as you work to build graphics for data storytelling purposes. 1. Data visualization, turning numbers into insights. This is what a lot of people think of when they hear data visualization or data storytelling. It's charts and graphs, and all of these things are very helpful. But some of these other techniques will help you as you work to build more custom infographics. Storytelling frameworks, structuring information for clarity. So this is that beginning, middle, end, hero's journey. Any of those storytelling elements that you can bring into this is important. For example, what we like to do is we like to really think about what is a day in the life of our customer like? What is it missing? What are their successes? And we really try to highlight those pain points and those wins and how we can accentuate or fix whatever those are for them. So in doing that and in calling those out, and that's those so what sections, or in designing with those in mind, we're speaking directly to them on an emotional level, and that's part of storytelling. Playing off of what I just said, audience analysis, knowing who you're talking to and what they care about.
Me again, coming in hot to just kind of reinforce that tidbit. Knowing your audience and their needs and their pain points is only half the battle. You really need to think about the subject matter knowledge as well. So, for example, recently we were working on a video that was going to accompany a written RFP submission. Our client was in the aviation space and as such needed to show their aircraft's HUD, a heads-up display. Upon further investigation into our previewers, we found that most of them had never flown or worked in fighter jets and weren't very familiar with displays of the HUD. This changed our entire motion graphics game plan. We labeled everything so that they knew exactly what they were looking at, the requirement was satisfied, and why it mattered to them. Any salesperson knows the why is how you get the client. Keeping your audience in mind throughout the entire design process is critical to creating content that's understood and that resonates.
Winning proposals happen at that intersection of design and storytelling, where your visuals don't just decorate, they deliver. Your graphics should enhance your story, not distract from it. Remember, the goal isn't to dump a bunch of data into a graphic. It's to guide the reviewer through it and to really highlight the so what factor. Like we said earlier, graphic design grabs the attention and data storytelling is what holds it. And when you combine these two, you get graphics that are both compelling and memorable. Now that we've shown you a few graphics transformations, let's go ahead and look at how we can combine creativity and logic to create proposals that work. Let's think of proposal graphics as a triangle. You've got visuals that catch the attention and guide the reader. You've got data, the backbone that adds credibility. And you've got storytelling, the glue that connects it all together. If any of these elements are out of sync, your graphics fall flat. A great example of this is a technical solution section, where raw data needs to be visualized in a way that decision makers can quickly digest, all while being grounded in a narrative that connects back to the client's needs. Mastering the integration. You have the option to write out your solution in text only. But if we switch the page spacing around, add a graphic, really highlight some numbers, you've just created an infographic and engaged your reviewer in a completely different way.
It's important to cater to as many learning styles as you can with proposal graphic submissions, and why we get so fired up about how graphics can really help elevate and set your RFP apart and help you guys win more funding. In marketing, it's referred to as the rule of 7. Reach your audience 7 times in 7 different ways. Essentially, make an impression. Proposals are very similar. They are 4 primary learning styles: read/write, auditory, kinesthetic, and visual. An exceptional proposal will be able to incorporate all 4 of these learning styles, especially if you have that orals presentation component. You've got your learners who prefer reading to interpret information. This is covered in proposals by the technical writers and the subject matter experts. And then you have the kinesthetic learners who learn by hands-on activity, and they really benefit from demonstrations and interactive dashboards and activities. Then you have your auditory learners, read-alouds, verbal instructions, discussions, repeat to a friend. Those people benefit from narrators, orals presentations, and video submissions when those are allowed. An excellent example of this in action is when we had a client, when a big proposal we worked on, they had a rare opportunity to ask questions to the review panel. Not very common in our space, but the question was brought up about whether graphics are important or worthwhile. One of the reviewers point blank said that they were a complete waste of time, that he never looked at them and only read the text. But then one of the other reviewers said that he typically skipped over all of the text and really narrowed in on what the graphics told him. And that's just kind of a prime example of how 2 different learning styles can completely either resonate or not resonate with a proposal RFP based on what information is in there and whether or not your graphics adequately express what the white pages are trying to convey.
Common pitfalls. Okay, now let's be real. Proposals can go south fast when design and storytelling don't play nice together. Here are some of the most common pitfalls we see. 1. Overloaded visuals that distract from key messages. I once saw a slide deck that had over 200 icons. That's a bit much. Focus on what matters. Focus on what drives your story. 2. Data-heavy slides that drown out the narrative. Just because you can have 15 charts on a single page doesn't mean that you should. 3. Disconnect between your graphic and the proposal themes. Your graphics should tell the same story as your words, not create confusion. If your visuals don't complement the story, they become noise. Instead of reinforcing key messages, they can actually confuse your evaluators, or worse, make them tune out. So how do you make sure that every visual pulls its weight? Simple. It's a technique called intentional design. Every element should serve a purpose. Here are the key principles to intentional design. Align with win themes. Ensure that your graphics reinforce your proposal's unique selling points. For example, a Why Us section should clearly show your key differentiators highlighted visually. You can even add these points in various graphic applications throughout your proposal. So for example, in one proposal that I worked on, we used a trophy to showcase our win themes, right? And every section of this proposal would have a little call out box with that same icon that essentially represented what this means to you, which were the key takeaways. This is a great, easy reference and way to flow through your document so that they know exactly what content they're looking at and that it provides a summary of the previous section. Support compliance requirements. Make sure that graphics help meet your solicitation requirements. For example, compliance matrices that visually demonstrate adherence. And don't forget that a lot of proposals have graphic requirements as well. Ensure your graphics are following any formatting guidelines in the RFP and staying Section 508 compliant. Purposeful use of space. White space is your friend. It not only can guide your reader's eye, but can create a logical flow. If a graphic doesn't answer "so what" in 10 seconds or less, it's not working hard enough. Let's say an energy contractor preparing their final submission to the government has a critical section that's just basically a wall of text. Whew, that's a solid wall. So let's take a look at this wall of text, and let's really start picking it apart and seeing what pieces we can take out to create an engaging visual. If you take a glance at this block of text, you're going to see that there are 4 distinct sections. Great, we have an outline. Now your initial inclination may be to put these phases on a timeline and call that good. And that would look something like this. But I'm going to challenge you to take what we've learned about data storytelling today, dig a little deeper, and showcase more information in a visual way. Like I said, the 4 phases are a perfect outline. So I'm going to create 4 boxes that represent each phase. I'm going to put phases 1, 2, 3, and 4 at the top of these boxes and then give each phase a title. Now the first thing I would want the viewer to know is, okay, I have the different phases, but what happens in each phase? So I'm going to go back to my wall of text and I'm going to pull out 2 to 3 bullets for each phase and put that in my graphic. In web design, you're encouraged to pretend that you're a visitor to the site and to think the way that they would. What questions do they have? What journey will they take? So when I look at our graphic now, I think about how, if I was the reviewer, I would want to know, how long would these phases take? Like, what's your timeline? Now, if you look back at the wall of text, there's no timeline or dates to be found. But I'm the designer, or a participant in the proposal, so I have access to the entire document. So I'm going to go back through all of the document, and I'm going to find the timeline, probably pull it from a matrice, and put that information right under the bullet points and call it out in a consistent way. So at this point, I have what phase it is, I have the title of that phase, I have what happens in that phase, and I have how long that phase takes. Now, what's the next thing I would want to know? Well, for me personally, it's, okay, so what are the results that we're hoping to get from that phase? Now, we're fortunate enough in this wall of text that they call attention to the same data points in each phase. So let's go ahead and create some bold standout numbers that are consistently shown throughout each phase. This way, the audience orients themselves in the first phase and knows exactly what they're looking at through phases 2, 3, and 4. By keeping them in the same line, in the same format, same size, same color, you're developing a pattern for the audience to recognize right off the bat. This leads to easier learning and, more importantly, retention. The less time your audience spends trying to orient themselves in your graphic, the more time they're going to spend taking in the information. If they don't know where to start or where to look, They're going to have a harder time taking in what you're trying to tell them. Now let's go ahead and throw some icons in there too. These can then be used in other parts of the proposal when talking about the same metric. So now we've created the timeline. We've told them what the phase is, what happens in that phase, what the results are of that phase, and how long each phase takes. But we're still missing that one component that I've been harping on over and over again throughout this whole presentation. The so what factor. What does this mean to me as the reviewer? What do I get out of it? Well, you can see the last sentence of this write-up says, upon completion, the AMNF1 facility is projected to provide a stable 1.2 gigawatt baseload power supply with a 95% capacity factor, delivering a 40% reduction in carbon emissions compared to conventional fossil fuel generation plants. I don't know what a lot of that means, but I do know how to present it visually and in a compelling way. So let's go ahead and do that. These most likely match up to requirements in the RFP, which is awesome. They just gave us our punchline. So I'm going to create its own separate call-out box, and hopefully I'm going to add an icon that I've used consistently throughout this entire document to highlight the so what or the when themes. And I'm going to add some icons, mess with some sizing, and put in my statistics. We have now given the viewer a full picture. Now, like I said at the beginning of this exercise, and what I've touched on as we've gone through this thought process, I am always thinking about what the reviewer wants to know. Sometimes we've got to look beyond what we've been given by the tech writers, the SMEs, and the proposal team. And we've got to really think about the well-rounded picture of data that can be pulled together in a single graphic. I can pull from all different areas of the document to create a single snapshot for the reviewer. We do this in case we run into one of the reviewers that Monica was talking about a while ago. One of the ones who only looks at the graphics and doesn't read the text. With our full view snapshot, they've now got their timeline and they've got their so what. So remember, graphics can be more than just a decoration. They need to tell a story, support your message, and guide your reviewers through your proposal. Practical tips and best practices. Let's face it, proposals are tough, but good graphics can make them a lot easier, both for you and your reviewers. Whether you're tackling a complex government bid or responding to a commercial RFP, applying the right design principles can make all the difference. In this section, we'll cover some practical tips and best practices that you can start using right away. First, let's talk about the do's and don'ts of proposal design. What should you be doing? Keep it simple and impactful. Your visuals should clarify, not complicate. Aim for designs that enhance understanding rather than add unnecessary complexity. Use a clean, structured layout that guides the evaluator's eye effortlessly through the content. Align visuals with the narrative. Every graphic should reinforce a key proposal message, whether it's showcasing differentiators, breaking down a technical process, or highlighting a success story. If a visual doesn't directly support your proposal's win themes, reconsider using it. Use data storytelling to strengthen key points. Instead of simply presenting numbers, use charts, graphs, and infographics to tell a story. For example, don't just show a bar chart comparing costs. Add a brief caption explaining why your solution is the most cost-effective without losing quality. Prioritize Section 508 compliance. Many proposals require compliance with accessibility standards, meaning your visuals must be legible for all users, including those using screen readers. Best practices include using high contrast colors, alt text for images, and avoiding text embedded in images without accompanying descriptions. Create a logical visual flow. Arrange your graphics so they follow a clear, intuitive structure. For example, a timeline should naturally flow left to right, or top to bottom, mirroring how people process information. Now let's talk about a few things you should avoid like the plague while optimizing your proposal graphics. Don't overload the page with too many graphics. A proposal should be visually engaging, but cluttering a page with excessive graphics can make it overwhelming. If every inch of space is filled with images, the evaluator may struggle to find the actual content. Don't use graphics just for decoration. Every visual element should have a clear purpose. For example, using a generic stock image of teamwork next to a section about collaboration doesn't add real value. It's just filler. Don't make evaluators work too hard. If a reviewer needs a magnifying glass to read the labels on your chart, it's too detailed. A lot of proposals will have font regulations that you need to look at within the RFP. For example, a pie chart with 12 different color-coded slices is nearly impossible to interpret quickly. Simplify whenever possible. Don't neglect branding and consistency. Mismatched colors, fonts, and styles across pages create a disjointed experience. Stick to a consistent color palette and typography that aligns with your company's branding. Don't assume the reader will figure it out. If a visual requires too much interpretation, it's ineffective. Every chart, infographic, or diagram should have a clear title, concise labels, and a brief explanatory caption. Like we've been told many times before, if you can't explain it to a 5th grader, you probably don't know it all that well. The same goes for graphics. If it's going to leave your audience member confused or lost, get rid of it or come up with a different way to present that information. If a visual requires too much interpretation, it's ineffective. A well-designed proposal isn't just about looking good, it's about effectively communicating. A well-informed graphic will beat out a flashy graphic any day of the week, even if it's unsightly. So just make sure that your graphics not only are beautiful, that graphic design piece, but inform, that data storytelling piece, and work together with your narrative to inform the customer of your solution. Tools of the trade. Now I'll touch on this briefly because everybody has their own preferences, but let's go ahead and look at the different tools that we can use to create those graphics. Most of the graphic designers and data storytellers who work on your proposals will be using the Adobe Creative Suite. Now this includes InDesign for layouts, Illustrator for vector artwork, Photoshop for photo manipulation, Premiere for video editing and basic animations, After Effects for full motion graphics, and Captivate for any sort of webinars. It's really a robust suite. It is a little more technical. It's not super user-friendly if you've never been in the software before. So there are definitely easier tools to use, but that is the industry standard. Now, if you want an app that works natively within a software that you already know and love, or at least use, it's PowerPoint, and it's Mike Parkinson's $1 billion graphics add-in. Now, this is a great way to take existing charts and diagrams and come up with more visual ways to display that information. It comes with a whole library of vectors, and because they're vectors, you can edit colors, you can edit styles, and it's really a robust tool for those looking to work in PowerPoint and not have to go learn an entirely new software. Now, I'm going to get some heat for saying this, but you can use Canva. I may go against the graphic designer code, but it is a viable option. It's a little more user-friendly. It's a little clunky. You don't have as much control as you would in like the Adobe Suite. However, it does give you some great ideas. It has some great graphic elements. So if you need to use Canva to win that proposal, use Canva. No shame. Now here are some alternative design resources that are free or at least less expensive than some of their alternatives. First, you have Pexels, and they are stock images. They're high quality, they're free, they're royalty free, and you can download them in any size that you need. So I would start there for any of your photo and basic video needs. Then you have FreePic, and FreePic's free plan does limit you to 10 downloads a day, but their library is impressive. You have stock photos, you have AI generated photos, you also have vectors, you also have Illustrator files, Photoshop files, EPS files. There's a ton of different content out there that can get you at least some of those graphic elements as you work to build. And last but not least, you have Motion Array. I love Motion Array. Motion Array is actually what made the intro video to this video. And what it is it's a bunch of video templates that you can use. They've also expanded to sound effects, to graphics, to AI narration. They've really expanded their offering, but what they're known for is their animation and video presets and templates. So if you ever need anything like that, it's $30 a month, and I would highly recommend it just because of their robust library and really their whole array of types of content that they provide to you. And the downloads are unlimited per month, so just another bonus. Even the smallest businesses can win with the right design strategy. Remember, it's not all about looking good. It's about communicating your solution in a way that sticks with the audience. Whether it's about securing funding, winning contracts, or building credibility, the right design makes all the difference. Your visuals need to do more than decorate. They need to communicate, clarify, and persuade. Before we wrap up, let's go over the key takeaways from today's session, because knowing is half the battle. Design plus storytelling equals winning proposals. Combine compelling design with clear storytelling to make your proposal impactful. Understand your audience. Tailor your designs to who's going to be viewing it, whether they have a technical expertise or a purchasing expertise. Think about your audience while you create your graphics and make your content digestible for them. Keep it simple, impactful, and aligned with strategy. If it doesn't reinforce your message or add value, get rid of it. We've all been there when a SME hands you a 50-page document and says, just make it look pretty. Well, hopefully some of our ideas and techniques will help you take those blocks of text and make them engaging stories. If you have a proposal horror story, please drop it in the chat now. If we all want to hear it, we all want to commiserate with you, and maybe we can even come up with some solutions as to how we could remedy that in the future. Let's analyze it in real time and see if we can turn it around. Thank you all for joining. Please remember that proposals don't have to be painful. With the right design and storytelling approach, you can make graphics that don't just check the box, but actually win.